Hello friends, I'm Brian, and this is Gizmo Board Games. Today I'm bringing you a hot take of Legacy of You, a solo game, a campaign kind of game from Garphill Games. Again, solo, one player. And I played this a few times, and I just want to bring my first impression after a few takes. I probably won't do a full review of this game ever. I think the hot take is kind of what you're going to get because, I'll play through the campaign. I might play through it again. I might not. We'll see how it goes, once I play through it. I'm about 5 games in, and you're going to play between 7 and 13 games, depending on how your campaign goes. Because you're going to play until you either win or lose 7 times. So that's a max of 13, because if you win 6 and lose 6, then the 13th game will be the end game. After each game, depending on how well you did, win or lose, you're going to flip over a campaign card that's, randomly shuffled. And there's a lot of spoilers in this game, so I don't want to show off too many of the things. But there's a stack of 7 win cards and lose cards, and then depending on which one you flip over from the stack for that game, that kind of dictates how your next game is going to start, whether it makes it harder or easier, depending on if you won or lost. Because if you lost, it'll get a little bit easier for you to get some help along the way. And if you won, things are going to get a little bit harder for you to make the next game just that much, a little bit more difficult. In Legacy of You, you are going to be generating resources, whether they're these shells, and I forget what they're officially called. I just call them kind of conch shells. You're going to generate provisions, which is a pretty Garphill Games standard provisions. You're going to generate different colored meeple workers that you're going to use. Hopefully you can kind of see those meeples there pretty good. And you're going to ultimately be trying to build up the canal. Here, let me show you the game board real quick with nothing on it. Boom, no spoilers. But you're going to build up the canal. Here, I guess I can get this up, make it a little bit easier. You're going to build up the canal. You're going to have different cards that are going to cover each section. And as you build a section, you're going to take the card off. And you can start using whatever's underneath, such as turn 2 conches into a provision there. And down the line, you get more and more capabilities as you go. But also, things are going to get harder for you, as indicated by this little icon right here, where you're going to keep getting more and more barbarians coming out at the end of every round. And you're going to have to fend them off, because if you get overrun by the barbarians, or if this little wave comes and floods your village before you can build up the canal enough, you're going to lose. The only way to win is to complete the canal and survive all the way through the Barbarians phase. And Barbarians phase is not easy. They're going to constantly grow bigger and bigger, as I mentioned before, when you grow the canal. They're going to be kind of harder and harder to beat, depending on where they're at on the board. And they require meeples to beat them, but also at the end of every time you decide you're done with your turn, they're going to attack you based on some on the bottom of their card. Let me see if I can find just a generic starting one here real quick to kind of show you what I mean. So, for example, this guy here, hopefully you can kind of get a good look at it. At the bottom, it's going to cost you either a card or a yellow worker to fend off that guy for the round. But if you beat him up, he's going to give you what's on the right-hand side, in this case, a white worker and a little conch shell. It's going to take 3 different workers to beat him up, 2 red and 1 black in this case, and whatever the cost of the provisions are based on where he's at the top of the board up here. So the first one, you're going to need to get 3 provisions, as indicated right above my finger there. 3 for the next one, 2, 2, 1, 1. And if they're all the way over here, you're already struggling. It won't cost you a provision, but that's as far as you can get with the barbarians. Otherwise, you're going to lose to barbarian defeat. Anyway, so that's a little quick overview of the gameplay. I'm going to go ahead and review this in the Gizmo style. One thing I didn't mention as far as gameplay goes, so while I'm getting into a little bit more of the gameplay, you're going to have these various huts that you can build, and they'll also unlock different spots for you and help you out as you place them along the river as well. So you're going to use things to your advantage to try to thwart the barbarians and build up the canal to stay ahead of the flood and ahead of the barbarians. If you can do that, you'll win. And like I said, you'll flip over a victory card, and then you'll have something that'll make your next game a little bit harder. If you lose, depending on the nature of your loss, you're going to read the storybook, and I've got that right here. Win or lose, and different times in the game itself, you're going to reference the storybook. It's got a bunch of story points and different things that are going to help you or hinder you along the way. And that's pretty cool. So it is a campaign game. For one, I like it better than most campaign games I've played. The gameplay is really, really tight. You're managing resources, you're managing meeples, you're managing worker placement. You're trying to open up worker placements. You're trying to open up the flood as much as you can, but if you open it too much too fast, you're not going to be able to generate the resources and the workers you need to fend off the barbarians. So there's quite the balance there with how fast you work towards the end game and how much you kind of sit on what you've got, trying to generate resources and buy yourself time so that way the later stages come easier. And I've got a 2-3 record in this game right now. After losing my first 3, I've won 2 in a row, kind of thanks to some of the help I've received for the wins. And now I'm going to start struggling again because now I've had a couple wins in a row, so I'm going to have a couple things that are going to hurt me. And I really like the give and take. I like the tightness of the resources. The fact that you got to think through trading everything, and you've got to always manage what you've got, what you're getting, what you're planning to do, what you're aiming for, etc., etc. As the game goes on, it gets harder and harder to make sure you've got the right workers, the right resources, the right everything to time it so you can get the victory, or at least keep yourself alive for another round and hope that round works out in your favor. There's just a lot going on. It's a nice little puzzle that is going to be varied based on all these cards here. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but here's a collection of all the cards in place. Just a stack of them. This is a whole story deck that you'll go through as indicated from the storybook. It'll tell you to find a number of cards in this deck, and you'll add that to the game for better or worse. I like the little, we'll get into that with components, but the gameplay, yeah, it's great. I've really enjoyed playing it. I've enjoyed the thinky puzzle of it. I'm a solo player, as you know if you follow me before, so this is right in my wheelhouse without being too much of a campaign and too much bookkeeping. Again, like the bookkeeping here is you're just adding new cards and taking cards away. That's it. There's no bookkeeping. I don't have to remember where my character was, what their special skills were, what their special abilities were, how much money I had on hand, etc., like other campaign games. I just grab the deck and I set it up like every other time. Whether it's the first game or the last game, you grab the deck, you set it up the same way. You might have a couple new cards that you're going to have as part of setup that you'll just put to the side, but that's it. No changes from game to game, and that's what I really appreciate about this game and other similar games such as the Pandemic Legacy series, where you're basically playing the same game again and again, but it's different because of what you've added and taken away along the journey of the campaign. So that's my thoughts on the gameplay. I really enjoy it. It's really nice and tight and thinky. Ingredients. What do I think of the ingredients? I've already kind of hinted at this, but the insert itself that comes standard in the box is nice. It keeps everything in place, and I literally play straight out of the box. I grab things out, I set this here to the side, and I've got all the components handy, all the resources handy. I don't have to take everything out and find a place on the table for it. I just keep the box kind of within reach, usually kind of right here. The board, it's nice and thick and sturdy. The art, I really enjoy the art. I always forget to mention this when I do the ingredients part, and I mean to include that in the art, but this is some great art by Sam Phillips. I believe Shem Phillips, the designer's brother, does the art in this one, and I like it. I think it's pretty neat. Some of the art is kind of wishy-washy in the Garphill Games. From my point of view, they're kind of hit or miss depending on the game, but in this game, I really think the art is pretty nice. I'll show you the backside of a card here too. So yeah, I mean, I personally enjoy the art. I think it fits the theme of the game pretty well with the kind of the Eastern Asian motif, and I don't remember what period it's supposed to cover, but you know, I think the art does pretty well. The board itself is very nice, colorful. You can clearly see the river. You can clearly see where the village is, where you're going to be using your villagers. The barbarians are going to be up here, and I don't know. I just like the art. I like the layout. I think it looks good. I think the components are nice and sturdy. The cards, you know, they'll stand up for quite a while. I don't feel the need to sleeve them. Like some games I pull out, everything else is wooden other than the provisions and the conch shells, which don't need to be wooden. Cardboard pop-outs, they work. So that's it for ingredients. I think they're pretty good. Z, is it easy to play? Yes, it's easy to play, especially if you're used to playing a Euro style game where you're going to spend resources or place workers to get resources or take care of barbarians, whatever. You're either spending resources or gaining resources, using cards, using meeples to get the things based on what they have on them or where you place them. Standard worker placement, standard card usage. If you're a Euro gamer, this is all standard stuff. It gets complex in the timing of it. You've got to figure out the best time to use the resource. You got to figure out the right resources to utilize at the time, because you can place cards underneath once you open up your board to get reoccurring help at the beginning of each round, and which card you stick there will be there for the whole game. So you might need certain things early in the game that you won't need later in the game, and vice versa. So you just got to manage that. You can unlock things where all your meeples can equal other colored meeples, and balancing that out to make sure you're picking the right colors matter. Making sure you've got the right number of provisions or conchas or white workers versus blue workers. Everything is very, very nice and tightly balanced, making the complexity of the game in all the decision making, not in how hard or easy it is to play. It's very easy to pick up and get right into. I think the bulk of the rules are over about 5 to 7 pages or so, and they're not complex at all. The complexity comes from managing the puzzle that is the game, as I mentioned, hopefully, in the gameplay overview. More of it. Do I want more of it? Yes, right now I do. Like I said, I'm 5 games in. I want to play through the campaign. I want to see what it has to offer, all the new items that can come and go. There's plenty of variability. Pretty much every game, I'm not going to spoil anything by saying pretty much every game I'm going to get rid of some card because of a story beats and add some other card because of story beats. So while the gameplay is the same, there are new things being added and taken away from the game every game, keeping it fresh. Is it replayable after a campaign? I think it's meant to be, because you're not always going to see the same cards based on how you met the story beats in the campaign. I think Shem Phillips in a post said you see about 40 to 60% in one campaign, which means there's 40-ish% to see the next time through if you shake it up. So it might be good for a couple campaigns through, but I feel after you played it through twice, you've probably got a pretty good feel on the strategy and the gameplay, and you've probably seen most of what it has to offer. But that's talking about 25 to whatever number of plays if you go the full 13 plays each campaign. And I feel like for the price, that's a pretty good amount of replayability. So yeah, more of it definitely as I'm in the first campaign. Later, I can't say. So that's how I feel about this right now. Originality. Is it original? I believe it, for the most part, is. Yes, it hits a lot of beats that many games have hit in the past. Again, like I mentioned before, if you're used to worker placement, if you're used to card generation of resources, if you're used to kind of using things to get things or get rid of things, all these beats have been seen before. But I think the idea behind it is relatively original. The story of you and trying to save the village from flooding is a nice story. The campaign itself in solo mode, I really appreciate, because like I said before, I'm not a big campaign player, and a lot of these campaigns are come in big boxes with lots of minis, and you've got to track down story and items and things from time to time. And like I said, this feels more like just kind of a legacy game. You got a little bit of the story. It's a cool story. And you've got the ease of the campaign. Like I said, you're just going to replace a card here or there, and you're going to add a card here or there. And that keeps the campaign moving. It makes it easy and smooth. And it's a nice solo campaign. It was built to be played by one. Unlike most campaigns, probably want teams. This one was set out for you to be playing by yourself through the story. So from that aspect, I think it's fairly decently original, and I appreciate the game because it works for me and how I want a campaign game to be. It's nice and small. It's bite-sized. You can play, I think it takes me 45 minutes to an hour to play through a scenario, and I enjoy it. It's just easy to get out, set up, and play on. So that's kind of leading in my final thoughts. I really like Legacy of You. I don't know how much legs it has after one playthrough. Hopefully, it at least has a couple playthroughs. But if not, I'm enjoying it regardless. Like I said, I'm probably about halfway through the campaign, and I'm just really having a lot of fun with this one. I look forward to getting it out. I'm not overbearing myself with it. I pull it out maybe once a week and play a scenario. So I'm not just burning through it. It's something that I look forward to, once a week, once every couple weeks, pulling out and getting back on the table and just playing it and enjoying the experience of it. That's why this one, I think for me right now, is a 4.5 out of 5 gizmos. And I could see it definitely fading. Like I said, once I've played through the campaign, it's not going to be as exciting and new then. And so in the new and exciting, I'll put it at 4.5. But I think it might drift into closer to 4 overall once I've played through it. And that's my thoughts on Legacy of You. My quick hot take. As quick as this video was, I still wanted to give it a fair amount of coverage and shake in the best I do. I know I'm not the best linguist, but hopefully you got something out of this and got a feel for whether you think this style of game might be for you, the Legacy of You. It should be hitting stores if it hasn't already very soon. I know it's finishing up fulfillment. It was a Kickstarter game that I have, so I received it a little bit ahead of retail, but I believe it's there now. I'm pretty sure it's on the Garphill website as of me filming this, at least, if it's not in stores already. So check it out if you're a solo player and want to check out a nice, manageable solo campaign that isn't overbearing, doesn't have all the minis and all the bookkeeping and everything that I don't like about campaign games. And if you're like me, you'll probably really enjoy this one. And if you're not like me, you might still enjoy it if you like a Euro-style game and you play by yourself. So that's why I like Legacy of You. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe below if you haven't already. And leave a comment below if you've received this game and what your thoughts are. And I will see you next time. Bye.